Welcome back to The Right Routine. This is episode 5, but today we have a special guest. Yay! This is my sister.
I'm G, the Pale Horse Farrier. I have 3 children. I have various experience with writing. I've enjoyed writing since I was small. Even as a very young child, I was telling stories and trying to act and be different characters that you see in movies. I have several books right now that are in various stages of development. I have been kind of remiss in getting them down on paper. I'm still trying to figure out different ways that work for the way my brain processes things to get it down, get outlines properly formed, and those kinds of things. What I really find helpful, though, is I've actually found, I saw your Instagram post the other day, the one where you were walking and you were dictating.
A little time lapse, yeah.
Yes. Okay, but it was so cool because I struggle with the whole time thing. So, I'm a farrier. I'm in the car a lot. I mean, not but enough where I'm driving somewhere and I've got 30 minutes or 20 minutes. And it was kind of like, okay, there's a nice little reminder that while I'm sitting in the parking lot waiting for my kids to get out of school or something of that sort, I can just sit there with my recording device, which I have. I have one, right?
Yeah.
And I can sit there and I can just try to dictate for a couple of minutes. It's really not a big deal. And I mean, you have kids. So it's nice to see that where you're doing it. I can also do that. That's my favorite post of yours, actually.
Oh, well, thanks. It was a lot of work to get the camera to stay where it was. And you can't see all the weird people. Not weird people. You can't see all the people giving me weird looks as I walk by talking to myself.
It's all for the art, right?
It's totally fine. Yeah. It's worth it, I'm sure. Well, see, we've actually, for those listening, we have actually written a book together. It was a Dear Diary. It was pretty dark, but a lot of fun to write. But you are just amazing. Your stories are so good. And I just really want them to be written because I would reread them.
Yeah.
We've discussed them a lot, but
yes,
really like those. So, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was going to say that's one of the nice things about having somebody else, like a part of like your little group that you can talk to about these things, where they can get invested in your characters, even if they're not. It's not a book that you're reading. You're discussing them, where they come from, and these people seem like real people because you're talking about them so much, and it keeps your motivation. And so, I like that you're kind of spreading that out into the world more, where you have a better group. Anyway.
I kind of started this because I've tried to get writer groups before on Facebook. I've been a part of a few, and it works for a little while, and then people drop away. And I don't have time to meet people in person. I'm not a social person, you know that.
Yes.
Neither of us are. But I don't know. I'm trying to be what I wish I had. So
which I think is great.
Well, we got to work on your book, though. And the one that, we actually started this whole writing thing together, working together with our stories, with the first story I was writing, and I would read it to you, and you gave me a lot of help with that one. That's a lot of good ideas.
Part of the fun, though, is the development, is the fun stuff. What's hard is getting it from all in here where it's organized and it's all pulled, and then, okay, well, now I have to somehow translate this.
Everything in my head. onto a page in black and white.
Yeah, into something physical.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's where most people struggle, is just getting the first draft out, the vomit draft, just spewing it everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's hard because, for me, and I think for you also, it's we're such problem solvers, and we want things to be accurate right off the bat. And so when you're just, vomiting stuff out, it's hard not to get caught up in well, that's not exactly the right way I want it put down.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's okay. That's not exactly this description I want. And you kind of,
that doesn't have the feel I wanted.
It doesn't have the feel, right? Yeah. So it's getting the struggle and the focus away from this draft right here. Okay, that is really hard, just to let it go. Like, okay, this doesn't matter right now. You're just talking about basic things. This is the spine of the story. It doesn't matter. You're coming back and you're going to, put muscles in, you're going to flush it out, the whole thing. But right now doesn't matter. And for perfectionists and the problem solvers and, whatever else, it's really hard just to let it happen. Instead
just
of
let it be horrible.
Yeah,
let it make it exist outside of your head.
Yeah, it's a struggle.
And I have a podcast about that. I already made one. What was it about? Yeah. It was either episode 2 or episode 3, which is like, how many episodes are there? Not very many. I should know which one it's from. So something I wanted to discuss in today's podcast was the value of telling stories to your kids. Because even though you are having a hard time writing your stories, you are amazing at telling stories to your kids. And I know that because I've overheard you when you were here visiting. The one with the little rabbit who would steal the beautiful flowers. Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. I was listening to that, and it was really good. It was really good.
Thanks. I think we're fortunate. Okay. Because some of my fondest memories are when we were little and Mom would come and tell us these elaborate, complicated series of stories that all somehow made sense and meshed together. And it was, these are very unique stories, but she would make them about us, but also we were more. Mm-hmm. So, the stories about the 3 princesses and the dragons, and there were, all these different characters, and somehow she just made a whole world for for us, essentially. It was us. And it was always just, I don't know, I remember those stories being just magical and helping me feel like I could do these amazing things, incredible things. And so, because that's one of my core memories, or whatever you want to call it, very special memories to me about my mother, and even Dad. I don't know if you remember Dad coming in and telling us stories, his versions of the 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf.
I don't remember, but please tell me more because I want to remember.
Okay. I wish we had recorded these or something, because I remember him coming in and we would all just bunch around him in our beds. We're in our jammies, and he would come in and he would lay down and we'd all just kind of snuggle into him. And I'm pretty sure Mom put him up to it.
Probably.
Put him up to it. But he would come and he would tell us these stories about the 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. But in his stories, these little pigs, from what I can recall, there were fruit trees involved, and these pigs they would go up into the fruit trees and they'd be picking these fruit because they were so delicious and stuff like that. And I wish I remembered more, because we asked him to tell that story, because it was like one story, but it was his version of this story, like over and over and over again. About these pigs that were picking fruit. Yeah. But that's what I remember about that one story. It was different because the piggies, there was something about the fruit trees and they were picking the fruit. And somehow that played like a big role into them getting away from the big bad wolf or something. Yeah. Okay, so that to me were special moments with my parents. Right. And then I also think not only were they, stories that they told to us, but, we have a really rich book culture in our family and movie culture in our family. And I just know now that I have kids, not only do I, all the movies I loved as a child, I am sharing with them. So we'll have movie nights like we used to when we were kids. And we'll be watching those stories that we enjoyed together, like, The Sandlot or Princess Bride, Lord of the Rings, or
The Green Robin Hood.
Yes, The Green Robin Hood. That's right. And Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. All those things, those were really important stories to us. And so now I'm sharing those with our kids. And then all those picture books that Mom read us, like Stephanie's Ponytail.
Alligator Baby.
Yeah, or the Alligator Baby. Yep.
Hackety Peg.
Hackety Peg. Lots of those were essential stories of our childhood, and I have whole libraries. I've been trying to gather all of those stories so my kids can have those stories. So it's this rich kind of family culture that I've tried to pass on to my own kids, where they too will love these books. And then we've added books that we've discovered and have come out, and we read those. So like my boys really like The Three Little Gators. And I read that. Yeah. So I read that book in Southern accent. I do the voices, right? And my boys love it. All the voices, all the things, because Mom too when she would read books, she did all the voices. So my stories tend to have a little bit more of a structured, like, moral to it, I guess.
Oh yeah, a lesson.
Yeah. So, they have elements that my boys can relate to. So you heard the story about the bunny, right?
Yeah, it was adorable.
Well, he loves, this particular child of mine loves bunnies. That's his favorite animal is the bunny, right? Is rabbits of all kinds. So he likes those stories about the rabbits doing things. And so I've done various versions of like the Three Little Pigs, but they're the Three Little Bunnies. Now, with my version of the three, they're essentially the three bunnies, right? So my boys right now, they struggle with being afraid of the dark, right? Or if they're having hard time sleeping in their own beds or whatever it is, this version of the Three Bunnies is about they're going out into a very scary world, right? The world is a scary place. They have to go out into the forest and they have to do the hard task of making their own place that is safe from the wolf, right? Because there's a wolf that lives in the forest. And so the mom bunny tells them that they need to make their own burrow. And they have to dig deep into the earth, where it's warm and dark and safe. But dark is the important element in that being safe. And so, a lot of the stories are the dark is scary.
Right.
Because you don't know what's in there. It's scary, but I want the dark to be safe because that's what they're struggling with.
Right.
That element is in there where something that is usually portrayed as scary is now a safe element to how these rabbits conquer what they fear, right? So, I don't know. I know with Mom, too, like, if we were struggling with something, that struggle ended up into the stories and morphed kind of how the princesses would handle things, whether it was the dark or friends or school or whatever it was. It ended up in the stories. And I like that when you tell a story to your kids, you get to decide what you can put in there to help them. Because that's essentially what it is. We tell stories to learn lessons for entertainment, but you're really learning stuff. A lot of the lessons that I don't know about you, but I'll get in a certain situation. I'll be like, I saw a movie about this. Right? This exact situation. I know how to solve this. But, whether that's naive thinking or, very basic, but it's like, okay, now I have something that I can work with if I'm not sure what to do because I was told a story about this. Yeah. And it's creative. And I think it helps my kids also to realize that they have stories inside them that they can tell. So, my youngest boy will tell me stories. What I like to do is when they're building with Legos, I'll ask them questions about the Legos. And it's fun because some of the time there is a story about this Lego piece. And I'll keep asking questions. Well, why does it do this? Why did you put that on or whatever? And a lot of these little characters or whatever that my kids make up, they have stories, and me asking questions about this helps create a story that they can now tell me. It's like, okay, well, tell me what it is. And I think it helps manifest, their own creativity and independence and the lessons that they've learned in a way that I can see it. Yeah, I think it's really interesting when you encourage your kids to tell you stories too, what they come up with and how you can see the world develop from their perspective.
Do you have any rules that you stick to when writing a story? Have you ever struggled to start?
No.
I think you're a magic unicorn in that.
Well, I mean, it would be great if I would, I have a lot, I haven't thought really about rules. I tend to I marinate on stories for a long time. So usually how the story, develops is I have a scene and I'll kind of just marinate on that scene. And a lot like how I develop, my children's stories as I start asking myself questions. Well, okay, how did we get to this scene, or where is this scene going? Who's in it? What does it look like? How does it feel? And after, years of marinating is what I'm talking about. This isn't just days or whatever. It years of marinating on an idea. And sometimes it pans out into something that I really think is worth, sharing or pursuing. And sometimes it's just well, that was cool to think about. But it's not interesting. I've gotten bored of that of that world, I guess.
Mm.
And I'm it's not worth spending time on.
Mhm.
But who knows, that might, elements of that might work its way into something else.
Mhm.
But I don't think I really have rules. Like, well, I mean, do you have rules when you start thinking about stuff?
Well, see, when it comes to telling stories to my kids,
Uh-huh.
because they don't care about them yet, I've tried and they don't care, which is fine.
Yeah.
So that takes a lot of the pressure off. But when it comes to writing my books, I have to have an outline that makes sense, that feels right, that is interesting to me. But I find with every single book, as I'm getting the first draft out, which is the hardest part of all, just getting that vomit draft spewed onto the page.
Yes.
The number one rule is just keep writing. Just get it down. If you have a scene that you're struggling with, skip it. Just skip it. Move on. Just keep writing.
Okay.
Because if you stop, you're never going to finish it, at least for me. And that's why I have a bunch of first drafts finished. I don't know how to edit anything yet. But
I don't know. I feel like I do better with the idea of the story than the actual, like, I don't know if you'd call it like the application of the story.
like execution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, see, this is why you and I need to work together.
Right. We've talked about that, how we have very complementary
skill sets
as systems. Maybe you would call them rules. And in that case, I guess I do have rules. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But they're complementary in that, you'll start talking to me about, an idea that you're developing, and I can ask those questions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you help me a lot to flesh things, make it make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you have those people that they have both parts of that system in their brain all at one time, like, wow, okay, you got it together.
Okay. So how has being a mother affected your writing and your stories?
Okay. So
let's put on our fake smiles and talk about this.
Okay. Well, no, that's a very interesting I don't know. I just say I'm much more of a marshmallow now that I'm a parent. Stories and lessons that I didn't understand a lot of stories or perspective before I had children. So I guess it's the same thing where you watch a movie as a kid and then you watch that same movie, right, as an adult, and it means totally different things. It's the same thing with the writing. Stories I developed before I had kids, I don't feel like they had as much depth, as much desperation so much, because I feel as a parent, you know what desperation is. And it just, I don't know if what I'm saying is making any type of sense.
That's good. Keep going.
But with the story that I'm working on right now with Neva.
Yeah.
Well,
love that.
She's a mother. And I feel like parents would understand her sort of desperation in certain scenes, and that the sacrifices more than people who don't have children, who aren't parents.
Yeah.
And I mean that, having kids tends to make all of your feelings I feel like a lot more.
It widens the spectrum of feeling.
It widens I would say that. It widens the spectrum of what is possible with your emotions. Mm-hmm. So before having kids, writing a story, a lot of it was just the same tone, the same kind of things. They tended to be a lot more shallow and kind of more like an angst, right? A very teenager-like angst. But having kids, it broadens the spectrum of not only situations, experiences or whatever, but you definitely have that wider range of what is possible emotionally, if that makes sense.
No, it does. And I agree with that. Thank you so much for coming on and talking. Do you have any inspiration? Is there something that inspires you when it comes to something that helps you to write stories? Is there a quote or a thought that helps you out?
I don't know if it's a specific thing so much, but I really draw inspiration from people like you who are willing to put their journey out there. Yeah. Well, it takes courage to be like, hey, I'm struggling and now you can see me struggle. Let's struggle together.
Let me film me not knowing what I'm doing. Watch it.
But that's courage, and that's you developing your own self, and hopefully you help me develop myself by having the courage to do that. I draw great inspiration from you. I also feel like we can get inspiration from just knowing that those stories that we love as kids, or adults, those stories came from somebody who sat through the process and did it, and that is inspirational. So, yeah,
that's good stuff.
That's it.
Well, thank you.
Yes.
And
well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Well, I love you.
I love you too.
Okay. Well, I'll talk to you later, okay?
Yep.
Bye-bye.
We'll see you. Bye.
Well, thank you for listening to this podcast. Sorry that it wasn't perhaps as professional as it will be in the future. I'm still figuring stuff out. But I appreciate you guys being on here and listening, and I hope that you take some time and tell a story to your kids. You don't have to make it up. You can tell a story that you've heard before, tell about one of your own life experiences. We will be having another podcast about this topic because I did a lot of research into it, but we didn't have time to go into that today. I really was enjoying what G was talking about, and I didn't want to interrupt that. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys next week, and keep on writing. You got this. Have a great week. Bye.